Okay. Thank you, members. Please welcome the Mayor's chaplain, Linda Elliott, who will be saying prayers this evening.
Please be seated. Good evening, friends. As a Quaker chaplain this year, I've begun council meetings with a thought from the Quaker tradition. I opened our first council meeting with you talking about how silence is very much an important part of how we worship. And then the next meeting, I began to introduce to you the 5 basic principles by which Quakers live. And I'm sure those principles find resonance with people of any religion and also with those who simply wish to live by humanitarian principles. So the first principle that I spoke of was focused on equality and community. The second principle, following on the next council meeting, I spoke about the need for truth and integrity in the whole of life. We come to the third principle this evening that I want to introduce, and that is the need to work at bringing peace, shalom, to all people. The principle of peace is depicted in the Quaker garden by the planting of 7 white birch trees in a circle representing the 7 continents. And in the center, there are some chairs that one can sit on and meditate on peace. You'll probably know that Quakers are very well known for being committed to peace. And it's for that reason that some find it impossible to take up arms and go to war. Not everybody holds that view in the Quaker tradition, but whatever stance is taken on that tradition, all Quakers try to work at being peacemakers in all human interactions. I'm sure you'll agree that so many of our personal problems, our community issues, and our world's problems are caused by unresolved conflict and people taking an aggressive stance rather than seeking a way forward to peacefully resolve an issue. On the world stage, whenever we watch the news, we see the deep suffering that conflict causes, which of course leads to a migration of people trying to escape. Where we can, Quakers try to work hard at resolving conflicts, but where it does occur, we try to compassionately help alleviate the suffering of those affected, regardless of nationality or faith, and sometimes we believe it is necessary to set aside the politics of a situation in order to show human compassion. As I've explained before, Quakers do not have set prayers, we keep silence. So I'm going to just lead us in a couple of minutes silence regarding issues of conflict in our world. And I invite you to join me in silence as we hold, as the Quakers say, in the light, whatever you consider that light to be, places and situations where peace is absent. Firstly, we hold in our minds any places of conflict in the world that are causing immense suffering to the people in that place. Secondly, in the silence, we think of any conflict situations closer to home that we might be able to resolve and heal. And then lastly, where any conflict has caused suffering to another human being, we think of how we might be able to alleviate it. Thank you, friends. Peace be with you. Shalom. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Welcome, members, those in the public gallery and those watching on the live stream. I will now hand you over to Rachel Edwards to go through some housekeeping points.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, can all those present please ensure that all mobile phones are set to silent? In the event of any evacuation, please exit through the doors on both sides of the chamber, following council staff to the assembly point. As per normal rules, if you wish to speak, please ensure that you raise your hand and you'll be invited to address the meeting. The Mayor has confirmed that he's happy for members to remain seated when addressing the chamber. Members are reminded that this meeting is being live streamed, so please ensure that when you speak, you use your microphone. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Agenda item 1. Are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Mayor. Apologies received from Councillor Ragzeb, Councillor Lane, Councillor Stevenson, Councillor John Fox and Councillor Judy Fox, along with others received immediately to the point.
Thank you. Agenda item 2. Are there any declarations of interest from members this evening which are not already recorded separately on their individual register of interests? None? Thank you. Agenda item 3 is in relation to the award of honorary alderman status to Irene Walsh and Ed Murphy. Councillor Stanford, would you therefore like to move the recommendations?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm recommending this report to Council to formally award the status of honorary alderman to 2 long-serving former councillors. These recommendations were discussed at the Constitution and Ethics Committee on the 6th of October, and it was agreed at that meeting unanimously to put forward Irene Walsh and Ed Murphy forward for this award. If we take those in turn, Irene Walsh served as a Conservative councillor for the Stanground Central Ward between 2006 and 2015. She then served the Hargate and Hempstead Ward between 2016 and 2018, and finally the Orton Longville Ward from 2018 to 2022. During her time on the council, she served on the Employment Committee, the Constitution and Ethics Committee, and the Environment Scrutiny Committee, and she also served on the Health and Wellbeing Board and the Police and Crime Panel. She was also for a period the Cabinet Member for Cohesion and Safety, the Cabinet Member for Communities and Adult Social Care, and the Cabinet Member for Health and Public Health. And during her period of service, she also had 1 year as mayor. Ed Murphy served as a Labour councillor for Ravensthorpe Ward between 2011 and 2022. During his time on the council, he served on the Audit Committee, the Constitution and Ethics Committee, the Licensing Committee, and the Environment and Resources Scrutiny Committees. I also personally recall that he was a frequent contributor to our meetings at full council. I would therefore like to recommend that those two councillors be put forward for honorary alderman status.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jamil, will you second the recommendation and either speak now or reserve your right to speak later on in the debate?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wholeheartedly support the recommendations of both ex-councillor Walsh and councillor Mercy, and I reserve my right to speak in case there's a debate later on.
Thank you. Can I call upon any other speaker? If there isn't any, Councillor Jamil, would you like to exercise your right to speak as a seconder?
Now, I'm happy for it
Yeah.
to move to vote.
Councillor Sanford, would you like to sum up?
There doesn't appear to be any opposition to the proposal, so I have no need to do any summation on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It is therefore agreed. Agreed. Thank you for that. This is the end of tonight's special meeting. The ordinary meeting will begin at 7 p.m. I would normally like to bypass the rearranging it for 7 o'clock. I'd like to continue, but because we have people who are coming a bit later and maybe wish to make contact with us after 7 o'clock, we can't do that. So we will have a small break and resume at 7. Is that agreed? Yeah. in the chamber this evening. Hopefully, we won't be here too long. But I'm all right. We will now hand over to Rachel Edwards to go through some housekeeping points.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, can all those present please ensure that all mobile phones are set to silent? In the event of an evacuation, please exit through the doors on both sides of the chamber, following council staff to the assembly point. As per normal rules, if you wish to speak, please ensure that you raise your hand and you'll be invited to address the meeting. The Mayor has confirmed that he's happy for members to remain seated when addressing the chamber. All votes will be taken via the electronic voting system. If a recorded vote is requested, this will be taken in the normal way. There is a points document. If you wish to raise a point, please raise the pink document on your tables and address the Mayor accordingly, stating which point you are raising. Finally, I'd like to remind members that this meeting is being live streamed, so please make sure that when you speak, you are using your microphone. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Agenda item 1, are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Mayor. Apologies received from Councillor Ragzeb, Councillor Lane, Councillor Stevenson, along with others received immediately prior to the meeting.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, are there any declarations of interest from members this evening which are not already recorded separately on their individual register of interests? None? Thank you. Agenda item 3, I would like to move approval of the minutes from the 12th of October 2022. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to second that for you.
Thank you. Is there any objections? If there's not, I will take that as agreed. Agenda item 4, Mayor's announcements. Firstly, I would like to move consideration of the improvement panel report up the agenda to be considered after questions on notice. This would allow guests for this item to leave following the debate. Since the last meeting, I, along with the Mayoress, Deputy Mayor and Deputy Mayoress, have attended several events organised in the community. Key events include the following: the opening of new offices and businesses in Peterborough, including Respond, Starbucks and Karak Chai. On the 29th of October, I attended a ceremony celebrating the 50th anniversary of the arrival of Ugandan Asian community in Peterborough. The Mayoral Party marked the armistice with a 2-minute silence on the 11th of November and Remembrance Sunday on the 13th of November. On the 25th of November, I hosted a Fly the Flag ceremony for the White Ribbon Day. The Mayoral Party hosted an open day in the reception rooms of the Town Hall on the 2nd of December. This open day was aimed at pensioners' groups. As this is the last full council of 2022, I would like to remind members that they are invited to join the Mayoral Party at the forthcoming Christmas wreath laying on the 15th of December at 10 a.m. And of course, you are all welcome to the Mayor's Parlour afterwards. I will hand over to Councillor Stanford as Chair of the Constitution and Ethics Committee to announce this year's Civic Awards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the Constitution and Ethics Committee meeting on the 21st of November, it was agreed unanimously to make the following civic awards. There actually are a number of categories, and I'll go through each category in turn. I will actually do my best with the pronunciations, but apologies if I do make any mistakes in that respect. So we start with the Community Involvement awards. The first one is Azure Chowdhury. The next one is Family Voice. Louise Craig, Miriam Whittam, Faustina Yang, Simon Cale, Fiona Winchester, Gemma Wells, Raja Rashid, Ruxana Sani, Mohammed Afzal, Arif Aziz, Fiona Safaldi, Christine Cunningham, Lisa Chadwick, Sally Hudson, Bettina Lufrod, Philippa Phillips, Cliff Walker, Raimonda K. Geit, Sneagol Miliyaskaya, and Asta Havali Yuguskate. Good neighbours, Martin Chilcott, Carol and Andrew Avery, Diane Dearden, Prudence Leah, and the final one is the Chinese community. Okay, I'll now go on to the category contribution to arts and culture. The first award is to Sue McGill. The next one is Tony Nero, and the third one is Romsey Mill. So I then go on to the Lifetime Achievement Awards, of which there are two. The first one is to Mr. David Jost, and the second one is Stuart Francis. The fourth category is Outstanding Commitment to the Environment. The first award is to Fred Truss. Then we have an award to Safina Rezam and Intikhab Ahmed. Then we have an award to Nathan Minter, and the final one is to Johnny Richardson. And the final category is the award for achievement in sport. The first award is to FC Peterborough. The second one is to Yasmin Siddiq, and the third one is to Jimmy Dean. And that concludes them. All the recipients will be invited to receive their awards at a presentation ceremony which will be organised in the spring. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Agenda item 5, leaders' announcements. Councillor Fitzgerald, I understand that you wish to make an announcement this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll rise to do this and you'll indulge me. I've been assured it is 5 minutes or so, but I'd like to start by saying a big well done to the skilled children of our city who performed exceptionally well in an important national assessment as revealed by Councillor Ayres at Cabinet on Monday. 29% of pupils taking the multiplication table test scored the full 25 marks. That's higher than the East of England and the national averages. The point of the test is to determine whether children can fluently recall their times tables up to 12, and it's an important measure for how well they are performing and what additional support they might need. And all those in the working group for the budget will be tested next week to see if they're all remembering the same thing. Out of the 151 local authorities, it places Peterborough as 38th nationally, and that's up from 107th. So our progress scores for primary schools also improved significantly, with maths being above national average for the first time since the measure was introduced. These impressive outcomes are a result of the intensely hard work by everyone across the education system in Peterborough, school staff, the education department of the council, and of course the children themselves. So well done to them all. I'd also like to welcome tonight Rochelle Tapping up on the dais there this evening, who's joined us as our new Director of Legal and Governance. Rochelle will form part of our Chief Executive's new senior leadership team, which is tasked with delivering ambitious plans to ensure the Council's financial sustainability and improve the opportunities for Peterborough. And we've also appointed Elaine Redding as our Interim Executive Director of Children's Services to take forward the strategic leadership of children's social care and education. Moving on, it gives me great pleasure to announce that our Customer Services team has retained the independently assessed Customer Service Excellence accreditation. And this year, I had the pleasure of meeting the external assessor myself and sharing some of the activities we undertake to engage directly with our customers. And despite that meeting, we managed to gain some extra credits. So something must have gone well. The assessment is based on the measurement against 57 criteria, and I'm pleased to share that we not only meet it, all of those 57, but we now exceed the standard in 24 of them, which is great news by all the team, headed up by Mark Sandu, of course, but he has a great team under him. I'd also like to mention that one of our council staff members has been shortlisted for a prestigious national award. Amanda Warburton, Partnership Officer for Cambridge and Peterborough Domestic Abuse and Sexual Abuse Partnership, has worked to develop solutions to support older survivors of domestic abuse and sexual violence, which has led to her being chosen as a finalist in the Women's Achieving Greatness in Social Care Awards 2022. So well done to her. On the subject of awards, the Cambridge and Peterborough Young Inspectors Group, made up of young people with a social care involvement, have been recognised for their exceptional Supervised Contact Centres project with their National Voice Award for participation from Quorum Voice. Meanwhile, the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Fostering Service recently hosted its first Foster Carer Long Service Awards ceremony since the pandemic. That was a big success. Attended by over 250, with many of the foster carers recognised for their dedication to young people in care and awarded for their years of service. So a big thank you to them as well. In other news, I'm also pleased to announce that the Council is signing up to the Unison Anti-Racism Charter, which will see us undertake a number of measures over the next 12 months. We're committed to prevent racial bias by championing a racially diverse workforce, having a clear programme of anti-racist initiatives, and providing training for all employees. Moving swiftly towards the end, finally, I was delighted to join thousands of people in Cathedral Square for our annual Christmas lights switch on. And again, I would like to say what an excellent job the Grinch, Steve Allen, did on choosing the tree. It does say Santa here, but I know him better. And what a great choice of a giant tree it was, which I think we can all agree this year looks spectacular. You'll also have noticed that Cathedral Square now has an ice rink, a little bit of a delay to start with, which is unfortunate. It's not something being run by the council, but we've promoted it, and we're pleased to hear that the organisers are very happy so far with the footfall, or skatefall that should be, with over 300 people visiting on the first day alone. There's no point in people complaining at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning that there's nobody in there, because they should all be at school. Just pointing out for those social media doomsters. And finally, just a late bit of breaking news. In the Public Finance magazine, Mr. Mayor, as pointed out by Eleanor Kelly, who's here tonight from our improvement panel, who chairs that, I'm sure you'll have a question for her, we've been reported on making significant progress on achieving financial sustainability, and the article, which you'll find on publicfinance.co.uk, is an interesting read, and it just shows, and I said so on Monday for those members of the opposition that weren't watching or hanging on to my every word in Cabinet, I'd like to thank the opposition for all the great work we've been doing in the last year. I know it might come up again, but just by way of recognition again, I think everybody's been doing a great job and we've made a great deal of progress. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Group leaders, you have 1 minute to which to respond. Councillor Shaz Nawaz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll take this opportunity to echo the statement made by the leader in the last 5 minutes. Pleased to hear that the students are doing so well. It's important that we support future generations and invest in their development. I'm also pleased to see our new staff member in Rochelle. She and I work together on the combined authority, and I know she's very capable and competent, and I'm sure she'll bring the same attitude and aptitude to the council and strengthen our team. Delighted to hear that our customer service team has retained its accolade. I know they do a lot of hard work in the background, and customer services can be challenging. So it's these kind of moments which I hope demonstrate to them that they are doing some fantastic work. As the leader said, well done to Amanda Warburton. Dennis tells me that we have a foster carer who's been working for us for 45 years. That's exceptional service and commitment, and I think we should appreciate, recognise and commend that type of service. And I'm absolutely thrilled that we're signing up to Unison's anti-racism charter, because it's important that we should address those issues regularly, because Peterborough is a place where we've got different communities and we all work extremely well, but there's always pockets of areas which need to improve, and by working together we can make it a better place. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hodd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I will try and keep it brief. I know you like me to put that in, makes you chortle. So just to echo what has already been said, I don't really think that I need to go line by line through all of these items. It's really great to hear some good news across the city. You know, things are happening. We're moving forward. We're getting great new members of staff coming on board, and I think that is where we need to be focusing about moving forward as a city, putting COVID behind us, and looking to the future. And I think that's what we should all be doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harper.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are many good news stories tonight, and we're all very welcome. So congratulations to everybody involved. We particularly welcome Rochelle and Elaine to their new roles and wish you every success. But what a fantastic result for our schools. So our thanks and congratulations go to the teachers, the parents, the carers, and of course the children for their effort and success. Well done to them all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Green Party is pleased to hear the leader reporting improvements in educational attainment. We recognise the achievements. However, as a party, we do not believe in the school league table method of pitting schools against each other, nor do we agree with the testing regime in schools. Nonetheless, we wish to thank teachers and educational staff for their efforts across the city, day in and day out, to provide the best possible holistic education for all of our pupils. We also want to warmly welcome Rochelle Tipping to her first full council meeting. And we also want to commend our council for working with community groups to open 20 winter support hubs across the city, offering food, energy and warmth related essentials. As Greens, we know that as we enter this era of late stage capitalism, the best thing we can do is to create communities that offer strong sense of resilience.
Thank you. Agenda item 6, questions with notice by members of the public. There is but one question submitted by a member of the public to this meeting. Question 1 from Rosemary Steele. Mrs. Steele would like to ask you a question in relation to civil defence arrangements in Peterborough.
I'm waiting for the red lights to go out that says it's working. Is it working?
Carry on.
Right. During COVID, I understand there were 12 field hospitals built in this country to be manned by armed forces personnel. None were used as isolation units, seriously affecting our NHS capability for normal functioning, which has been an ongoing cause. Which makes me ask, what facilities does our civil defence sector in Peterborough have in the event of war, disaster, natural health or ecological, and what trained personnel are there currently?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mrs. Steele, for your question. It's always welcome to receive members of the public into the chamber, as is anybody's right to come and ask me or anybody else questions. I'll just share some information with you by way of a response. All activity regarding emergency planning is governed by the Civil Contingencies Act, which replaced the Civil Defence Act of 1948. As a result of this change, Peterborough City Council has no direct responsibility for planning in relation to war. The council does employ a team of 4 officers shared with Cambridgeshire County Council to undertake the work of preparing for other types of emergencies. This preparation is undertaken in partnership with the emergency services, other statutory bodies in the area, and representatives from the voluntary sector who provide a vital contribution to any response. The partnership is called the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Local Resilience Forum, CPLRF, and its purpose is to coordinate risk assessment, planning, training, and response when any incident occurs. The partnership is currently chaired by the Chief Fire Officer, who oversees the activity of the group, along with a board made up of chief officers from the contributing organisations. The partnership has an annual programme which provides in-depth training to the staff of all contributing partnerships and organisations, and to the voluntary bodies which contribute personnel in the planning and response to emergencies in or across Peterborough. The CPLRF has responded to numerous incidents over several years and played, for example, a pivotal role in the response to COVID-19. I hope that answers most of your points.
I don't know whether this will work again straight away. I'm disappointed to hear there isn't actually any current coordinated plan. You said when an accident happens, when an incident. Do you mean that they're not keeping their training up to date right now? Because it's exercises that were held at intervals to see that teamwork was active and interactive adequately that is essential, especially in these times.
I shall repeat again what I said to you in the 3rd paragraph. The partnership is called the Cambridge and Peterborough Local Resilience Forum, CLPRF, and its purpose is to coordinate risk assessment, planning, and I'll add a word, ongoing training. I took training to mean that it is active and obviously will be, as new things develop or new training becomes available or new initiatives, that training will be shared by that partnerships with the organisations that are part of that forum. I hope that answers your question.
Rosemary?
Oh,
yes.
It satisfies everyone else.
Thank you.
I think the Mayor may have something to tell us.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for coming along this evening. Agenda item number 7, petitions. Those presenting petitions this evening will have 1 minute to outline their request. Are there any petitions from the public? None? Thank you. Are there any petitions from members? None? After all petitions have been presented, I wish to thank you for that. Agenda item 8, questions on notice. There have been 13 questions submitted by members this evening. All questions have been published on the council website and will be taken as read. Question 1 from Council Emrat. Yes. Councillor Seresti, would you like to respond to the question from Councillor Emmerich in relation to St Michael's Gate residents?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Emmerich. The accommodation at St Michael's Gate is managed by Stephen Phillips, although we understand that it is being offered by them to other councils for homeless households on a nightly basis. In accordance with the Housing Act 1996, councils are required to notify us if they place an applicant in accommodation within our city. And we are currently aware of one household that has been so placed at St Michael's Gate by another council. Any councils who place households in St Michael's Gate will be responsible to cover the costs of funding their stay. However, council tax support, if required, would have to be funded by Peterborough City Council, and households placed in St Michael's Gate can access local services and will be financially responsible for maintaining their accommodation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Emma, do you have a supplementary question?
I do. You said one family's moved into St Michael's Gate. Are you aware of any other families that are likely to move into there from other councils? Thank you.
Well, I'm not personally aware of any other families that are likely to move into St Michael's Gate, but it is I think reasonable to assume that if they are offering accommodation to other councils on a nightly basis, we are likely to get some. The way the market is at the moment, I would imagine the stress and strains of households and homelessness are the same everywhere as they are in Peterborough.
Thank you, Councillor. Question 2 from Councillor Ansar Ali. Councillor Steve Allen, would you like to respond to the question from Councillor Ansar Ali in relation to parking in designated taxi ranks?
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Ali. I echo the view that our taxi drivers offer a vital service for our city and sympathise with them regarding this challenge. Our parking enforcement team operates between the hours of 8 a.m. to 8 p.m, which allows the team to cover most parking problems experienced across the city. Taxi ranks are patrolled during this time, and over the last 6 months, 400 penalty charge notices have been issued for illegal parking in the ranks. Whilst the issues you have raised fall outside the normal enforcement patrol hours, we periodically arrange special late-night patrols to address this issue, and will do so in response to this request. For background information, over the coming weeks, the patrols will link with Taxi Marshal Scheme, which I'm pleased to announce will be in place this Christmas, funded by the Police and Crime Commissioner. Whilst not specifically focused on parking, these marshals will provide reassurance and support to taxi drivers throughout the festive period and will be on hand to prevent antisocial behaviour and other issues. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor. Councillor Ansari, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Councillor Allen, for your response. As you said, that there are from time to time patrols in the evenings after 8 p.m. But from what I understand, the problems continue for the taxi drivers at these ranks. What efforts is the council making? I understand that the marshals will be there in the future, but these problems seem to crop up quite regularly for the taxi drivers. We need to find a sustainable solution so the taxi drivers can operate freely without having to negotiate people taking up their designated parking spaces. Thank you.
Does the council wish to respond?
Yes, indeed. I'm happy to respond. As I mentioned in the first delivery, we periodically arrange special late-night patrols to address this issue. What I will do is take your point back to the council taxi officers, because I think that it's unfair that taxi drivers have to engage with drivers taking up their space, and I think that the taxi officers should perhaps arrange some more regular visits to the area to deal with the issue you are explaining. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Question number 3 from Councillor John Fox. Councillor Steve Allen, would you like to respond to the question from Councillor John Fox in relation to the cost of the Lime Academy hydrotherapy pool sessions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sip of water to keep the voice working. A search of national charges for hydrotherapy indicates that the charge of £12 per hour, referring to the Lime Academy, is extremely competitive. I must remind members that hydrotherapy pools are ordinarily either private ventures operating for profit or provided by the NHS and are not provided by local authorities. I also need to be clear with members that the council make no profit from this facility. Rather, based on current user levels, we are subsidising its operation despite having no obligation to do so. The charge contributes towards the cost of hiring the pool and providing qualified staff, and is the absolute minimum needed to maintain the facility. In fact, to make this viable in the long term, we need at least 12 users in each session, but at present we are only seeing an average of 3. I would encourage those who find hydrotherapy advantageous to their health, mobility and well-being to use the facilities at the Lime Academy, and in doing so ensure its long-term availability as a fantastic state-of-the-art facility for outside users. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor. Councillor John Fox, would you like to?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, very kind. How will you guarantee that people in most need of hydrotherapy will be able to afford this facility, and at what price to their future well-being? As it worked in the past, I don't see why it couldn't work in the future. Do you think it's also fair to charge carers £12 a time when they're not actually using the pool, but assisting people with disabilities? That seems grossly unfair and unnecessary to do that, and I hope you'd review that. If they're not using the pool, why are they paying? They're doing a service to the person with a disability and therefore should do it free, and it should not be charged.
Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand your concern, Councillor Fox, and I know your passion for providing hydrotherapy in our city, which I share. But of course, economics have to play a part. It's not an obligation on the part of the City Council to provide the facility. And I think it should be understood that there may be residents with long-term health issues who are eligible for personal independence payments, PIPs. A PIP can help with extra living costs, including activities such as hydrotherapy. A PIP could help provide an affordable solution to the £12 charge at the Lime Academy. Even in these straitened and unpredictable days, the potential benefits associated with water-based exercise are surely worth £12 for the user. And so I understand the pressures on finances, but that's across the whole world, certainly across the whole country at the moment. And if you want treatment, maybe a contribution should be considered. I will take back your point about the carer, though, Councillor Fox. I do think it takes up space of others, but if it's not at the moment getting an awful lot of use, then it's not taking up space, so it maybe could be considered. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Fox.
Thank you. Question 4 from Councillor Sandra Bond. Councillor Seresti, would you like to respond to the question from Councillor Sandra Bond in relation to the bus service cuts?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Bond. Well, our council officers continue to work closely with developers across Peterborough to ensure that new sites are designed and constructed to support the provision of bus services. Officers also work closely with the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority, who actually have responsibility for bus services, to try and ensure that they are aware of the new developments coming forward, alongside existing developer contributions to ensure services operate at the earliest possible opportunity. This is balanced with the need to ensure that physical infrastructure is in place and routes are passable for the bus network. I can further assure you that officers under my direction are continuing to work with both the developer and Stagecoach to resolve the current issue. Crucially, officers are also reviewing the process and legal agreements in place to ensure such a situation does not arise again in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Bond, do you have a supplementary?
No, I don't, but I'd just like to thank Councillor Marco Seresti for that very in-depth answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, question number 5 from Councillor Wiggins. Councillor Steve Allen, would you like to respond to the question of Councillor Wiggins in relation to spend on legal action related to asylum seekers staying at the Peterborough hotels?
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Wiggin, for your question. Topical subject, obviously. The action taken by the council has cost £2,038, including fees to seek an interim injunction in relation to the Great Northern Hotel. No legal action was taken against the Verve Hotel. Members will be aware that legal action is no longer being pursued. Thank you.
Councillor Wiggin, supplementary? No supplementary. Six from Councillor Quirman. Councillor Steve Allen, would you like to respond to the question from Councillor Quirman in relation to communications of the arrival of asylum seekers in Peterborough hotels?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'll stand up all the time. Hey? As widely reported, the council was not consulted on the use of the 2 hotels for asylum seekers, nor were we given any advance notice that they would be used. Unfortunately, it is therefore not possible to brief members in advance of the arrival of the asylum seekers. Members were contacted on the day of arrival, that was the 11th of November, in advance of our press statement. Once information became fully known, a more detailed member briefing note was circulated, updating on our position. The asylum situation is fluid, and we are reliant upon the information released from the Home Office and their contractor, Serco. Officers are continuing to liaise closely with them to maintain an updated position and will send further member updates as and when the new and significant information becomes known. Like many councils, we have also appealed to the Home Office to provide more timely information as far as in advance as possible going forward. I hope, Councillor Coyham, that answer is to your satisfaction, and thank you so much.
Yeah. Councillor, do you have a supplementary?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Allen. Do you then agree that in the interest of safeguarding, when there was no risk to the public by the occupants of the 2 hotels, that it was not in the public interest to reveal their location? Keeping in mind, I have here an email from the then Cabinet Member for Communities, Irene Walsh, dated the 16th of February 2021, which states, quote, "As in previous years, it is our intention not to make public the exact location where the people have been housed to protect their privacy. Additionally, how does revealing this information now meet the standards of Councillor Ishfaq Hussein's motion on the City of Sanctuary in June of this year, where the 6th pledge of his motion states, quote, fact-checking and challenging anti-refugee and anti-migrant attitudes wherever they are found? How can you guarantee that refugees will be safeguarded in totality on the back of this publicly declared pledge, as it appears that this City of Sanctuary is very selective in its offering? I would request that these points are noted for reflection in future."
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Do you wish to respond to that, Councillor Allen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and happy to respond to Councillor Graham. We are indeed a city of sanctuary and something we are very proud of and we take forward with positivity. The issue in question is topical and newsworthy and had indeed been released by the press and spoken about by the MP. So it's very difficult to dampen something down when, as they say, it's out there. But I take your point, and I think that we should be cautious of the language used going forward, although this council will not feed the fire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Question 7. Councillor Steve Allen, would you like to respond to the question from Councillor Shaz Nawaz in relation to the take-up of the hydrotherapy sessions at the Lime Academy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Nawaz. The Lime facility has operated a trial service for the last 5 weeks. It offers 3 sessions on Monday, Tuesday and Thursday evenings and 6 sessions on Saturday. Initial take-up was slow, but has increased slightly, and on average there have been 40 users a week. Overall usage is not at the level we anticipated, but we are committed to allow more time to fully promote the facility and maximise take-up. We will therefore continue to operate and promote the facility in the hope that usage will continue. And I will repeat, not verbatim, but I'll repeat the point I made in the question asked previously about the Lime facility. I would urge all users and support groups to really put the facility to use so that we can maintain it as a fantastic state-of-the-art facility going forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you have a supplementary?
I do, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Allen, for your answer. You're clearly popular tonight. Long may that continue. Given the background of some of the users who used St. George's facility in terms of some of the complex medical issues faced by users, there was a pre-medical assessment team and facility at the previous pool which helped address some of the complications. What I'm really interested to find out is, do we have something similar in place at the Lime Academy? And if so, how are those assessments taking place?
Councillor?
Sorry, yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was waiting for the call. I'm trying to pick up on what you're saying. You're saying there was additional support staff at the previous facility. Okay, well, that wasn't provided by the council. So indeed, if it was provided by an outside provider, we can certainly investigate whether that could again be provided. Clearly, not at the cost to the council, though. That's the important thing in these difficult financial times. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Nawaz.
Thank you. Question 8 from Councillor Sanford. Councillor Steve Allen, would you like to respond to the question from Councillor Sanford in relation to statements regarding asylum seekers in Peterborough hotels?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to stand again and answer the question from Councillor Sanford. Refugees causing a threat to strategic infrastructure. It's a bit of a convoluted statement, but I will explain our view. The council does not consider asylum seekers themselves to be a strategic threat, but we are genuinely concerned to ensure their safety and that of our residents and visitors whilst in our city. We do not believe the Great Northern Hotel is a suitable location because of its proximity to major rail infrastructure and the identification of increased risks to asylum seekers and the hotels they are staying in. We have in mind the recent events in Kent, which have been confirmed as terrorist in nature. We are also anxious that the proximity of the train station increases this risk, that it could be presenting opportunities for people traffickers to operate more freely. Thank you, Councillor Sanford, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm grateful for that response. Is the Cabinet member aware that a recent report by the Home Affairs Select Committee found that of people arriving in the UK in small boats in 2021, only 4% had had their claims fully processed by the end of 2022, but of those, over 85% had had their claims accepted, so finding that they are genuine asylum seekers. So, would the Cabinet member agree with me that it is therefore regrettable that our Member of Parliament persists in branding these people as illegal immigrants? And it's also regrettable that the Council puts out press releases which implies that these asylum seekers may pose, in inverted commas, a threat to strategic infrastructure. Should they not instead of being referred to in those terms, should they not instead be treated as what they are, a group of very vulnerable people in urgent need of care, shelter and protection?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I couldn't quite hear the call. I take the points you are making, Councillor Sanford. It may be semantics, but this is an issue of great public concern, and different languages and different points of view are out there. So I can't speak for the MP. All I can say is that perhaps inflammatory language should be avoided at all costs, but whether that is an inflammatory statement, I don't know. We welcome refugees in this country. We are a city of sanctuary, but clearly we want legal migrants arriving not only in England, but in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Question 9 from Councillor John Fox. It is for Councillor Howard. Would you like to respond to the question from Councillor John Fox in relation to the lack of care home places in Peterborough?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Time to give Councillor Allen a few minutes off. So, yeah, and good evening, Councillor Fox. Thank you for your question. As the current Cabinet member, I'm answering your question after liaising with the leader for you on your question. I must start by saying, firstly, there is no appalling lack of care home spaces, and just to offer you reassurance, we have a total of 1,219 residential and nursing beds in 21 Peterborough-based care homes, and that's as reported on the National Bed Capacity Tracker. As at the 1st of December, there were 113 empty beds in 16 of the Peterborough homes. Peterborough City Hospital has 612 beds, and of those currently awaiting discharge by Peterborough Adult Social Care, as at the 1st of December, there were 3 people who were being discharged and processed with no undue delay. Our strategy and focus has been to maintain people's independence and help support people in their own home. We have invested in preventing, reducing and delaying people's needs, escalating through continued long-term investment in services like reablement and tech-enabled care. The outcome of this is reflected in there being only 10 additional residential placements between March 22 and November 22. The impression you may have of delays, Councillor Fox, is not caused by lack of bed spaces, but could be caused by a shortage of domiciliary home care and reablement staff. I hope that reassures you and answers your question.
Councillor John Fox.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We were told as opposition councillors, and I also spoke out passionately about the closure of the 2 large care homes in Peterborough, and we were concerned then about it would cause bed blocking. You're trying to tell me that it's not causing bed blocking, but we know from personal experience, myself and Judy, having been in hospital, there's people there that can't find anywhere to go to. There's no place to send them to, so the beds are taken up by these people. You repeatedly, or the leader repeatedly, assured us that the closure of these 2 care homes would not cause bed blocking. How very wrong, in my opinion, you were, and are you now going to take some positive action to try to eliminate this situation, especially for those of us who are getting older, because there is people in hospital and the nurses have got nowhere to send them to, and that is fact.
Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Fox, I've given you all the numbers to reassure you that that's not the case. We stand by the decision that was made those years ago because we in fact have more bed spaces now in better provisions as well. So, you know, the decision proved right in time and the numbers back that up. If you have any specific issue, you are more than welcome to email or ring me, and I will of course look at it on case by case. But, you know, we've given you the information, the numbers to assure you, and there is more bed spaces now than there was at the point of closure of those 2 care homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Question 10 from Councillor Keown. Councillor Ayres, would you like to respond to the question from Councillor Keown in relation to the Clare Lodge Ofsted report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly would, and thank you very much for the question, Councillor Keown. The Council will be aware of the Ofsted inspection at Clare Lodge on the 13th, 14th and 15th of September this year, where the overall judgment was that of inadequate. This was of great concern to the service and, of course, to myself, as the unit always endeavours to offer the best possible care to the young people living there. The impact of COVID has compounded long-standing challenges with staffing. Nationally, there has been an increase in the level of complexity for the young people that would access this provision. And we accept that the high standards that we set ourselves have not been sustained, which has resulted in the Ofsted judgment. In recognition of the complexity of need, the local authority increased management capacity, reduced the number of young people who could access the facility, and implemented at pace and with purpose an improvement plan. An early review by Ofsted in October confirmed that all immediate safeguarding checks had been addressed, and the full re-inspection took place on the 29th and 30th of November. The new judgment is provisional and embargoed at present, but I am reassured that Ofsted clearly recognised the intensive intervention offered by the local authority in recent months. Clare Lodge is a complex provision with a long-term plan, and a long-term plan is needed to ensure its future. A detailed options appraisal will be presented at the Children and Education Scrutiny Committee in January or February of 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, do you have a supplementary?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Ayres, for that response. But in view of the immediate notices that are to be served after the Ofsted report, i.e. Regulation 12, Protection of Children, Regulation 13, Leadership and Management, Regulation 20, Restraint and Deprivation of Liberty, and despite the measures implemented to address these, including decreasing bed occupancy from 16 to 4, it is doubtful that staff are going to be trained within the short 16-week period to become competent enough to ensure the safeguarding of these very vulnerable young girls, which appears as our failure as a local authority. Could you give us reasons as to why such gross failings happened in the first place? Thank you.
Councillor
Yeah, thank you for that further question, Councillor Keown. I think I've already indicated why this came about. It came about during the COVID period, of course, and I have already stated to you that the level and complexity of the young people going in there was far higher than it had been in the past. However, I do want to point out to you that we have recently had Ofsted revisit again and hope and could see improvements in many areas. That is what they are saying. We are anticipating and hoping to report a more positive news very shortly indeed.
Thank you, Councillor. Question 11 from Councillor Ansar Ali. Councillor Zresti, would you like to respond to the question from Councillor Ansar Ali in relation to damaged street lights?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Ali. The majority of the city street lights are connected directly to a UK Power Network owned and maintained supply. Unfortunately, should a fault with the power supply be identified, the council requests attendance from UKPN, that's the UK Power Networks, to repair the fault. We are unable to carry out the work on their assets. Once the request is made and orders raised within UKPM, the Council has no authority over the programming of the UK Power Networks, which can vary between 8 and 16 weeks for certain types of works. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor.
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. I do have a supplementary.
You have a supplementary?
Yes.
So, sorry, my papers have been disturbed quite. You have a supplementary.
Thank you. I appreciate the response from Councillor Cheresti. We as a council, we are responsible for keeping our communities safe. In these wintry evenings, when it gets dark quite early, in certain areas, when communities have to wait up to 3 months, if not more, for a street lamp to be repaired, it is unacceptable. We as a council should be able to play some part, because we at the end of the day are the ones who are asking people to pay their council tax so that we can actually maintain the street lights and keep their streets free of litter, etc. And we don't seem to be doing that very well, unfortunately, when we are out and about in the community.
Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I completely agree with you, Councillor, and my staff and I will be looking very, very, very closely with the arrangements that we have with UK Power Networks, and if we can possibly improve the situation, we will do so.
Thank you. Ran out of time, I'm afraid, from questions from members, so Councillor Allen can relax. But we'll move over to agenda item 8D, questions on notice. There have been 3 questions submitted by members this evening to the combined authority representatives. The first of which is a ward-specific one and has been responded to in writing. Question 2 is from Councillor Wigan. Councillor Fitzgerald, would you like to respond to the question from Councillor Wigan in relation to the assessment and renewal of bus services tendered by the combined authority?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will. It's too early to say, as data for the first month of operation hasn't been collated yet. In terms of April, the main issue is one of future funding, and papers were presented to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, as well as the board of the Combined Authority last week, to start discussions about how the additional funding required might be sourced. This will now form part of the budget consultation recently started, and all the details are on the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough ca.gov UK website, or if you need the actual link or address, if you email my office or Democratic Services, it's contained within the papers, but I'm sure they can send you an electronic version of it if you don't have it already in your papers this evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wigan, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of my concerns when the services were put out to tender again was that they were like for what was already there, and member concerns that had been previously raised about these services, and particularly the times they run, for instance, for the 29 to the hospital, that they don't run when people actually need them, were not addressed. Will our combined authority representatives ensure that members' views on this are put to the relevant committees, and that members' views are sought before the decisions are made, alongside us, obviously, responding to the consultation?
Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's probably worthwhile and timely that I should remind all members and group leaders, So whether it goes through your group leaders to me as the rep on this, or via Marco on the Transport Committee, of course all views can be represented at the Combined Authority, and I'd be happy to take forward all and any views. I share extreme concern about the way the Combined Authority have been dealing with the transport strategy, or in the case of Councillor Sanford might say, not dealing with the transport strategy. So it leaves a lot of questions to be asked. As you may well know, the Mayor is off sick, but people need to progress with proper transport strategies, and that includes buses, and we share very similar concerns. I'm sure most members do across the chamber. So there are a lot of questions to be asked and a lot of work to do before April, because I don't think the picture is looking very bright for bus services, and somebody needs to find the money.
Thank you, Councillor. Question 3 from Councillor Sanford. Councillor Fitzgerald, would you like to respond to the question from Councillor Sanford in relation to the recovery of subsidies from council bus services?
I would. I was just checking whether Steve wanted to get up again and answer this one. Must be his turn. Stagecoach are expected to adjust their invoice and not claim for journeys that haven't operated. Any information members have about journeys that haven't operated would be welcome to help checking that this has been done by Stagecoach. And again, if it's submitted through Democratic Services, I'm sure they'll be able to forward that on to the relevant team in the Combined Authority and or comment on any mechanism for whether this is then refunded back to Peterborough City Council as part of our levy. I know that officers are aware and are keeping a close eye on what money is being spent on what services, and whether or not, shall we say, the money we provide may be not being spent for the benefit of Peterborough residents. So we are aware of it, and I think the team are also aware, but anybody got anything else on it as evidence? Submit it.
Thank you. Councillor Sanford, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do have a supplementary question, because I do find that answer a bit concerning. It surely, this is £3.5 million of Peterborough City Council money that's been given to the Combined Authority. It shouldn't, the majority of evening and Sunday bus services are subsidised by the Combined Authority. I'm aware anecdotally that a number of those have been cancelled, but surely it shouldn't be up to individual councillors to report this to the Combined Authority. So I've actually asked this question to the Combined Authority and not had a reply. So would the Cabinet member, would he actually undertake to ask this question to the relevant officers at the Combined Authority? What mechanism are they putting in place to ensure that money is refunded, first of all, to the Combined Authority, and then, if necessary, to come back to PCC? Surely that is good financial accounting practice.
I think you misunderstood, Councillor Sanford. The process does not rely on you or me to report this. What I said is, if you want to add additional evidence by way of support, then you shouldn't be prevented from doing so. What I also told you was that officers are aware of this concern. My colleague, Councillor Coles, is to raise it at overview and scrutiny already. Marco will probably raise it in the Transport Committee, where public transport is discussed. So what you're hearing is, we are aware of it, and officers are aware of it, and it is being looked into. But as I know you're an avid bus fan, and you could probably name all the routes and the timetables, anything you can add to help support the members in their case would be helpful. It's not necessary that you do it, but I know you like to be involved.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. As mentioned earlier, we will now move on to 13A, which is in relation to the Independent Improvement and Assurance Panel report. We do have the chair of the Improvement Panel, Eleanor Kelly, with us this evening. Should members have any queries for her, I'm happy as Mayor for Eleanor to respond to these this evening. Councillor Fitzgerald, would you therefore like to move the recommendations?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendations are as set out in the panel's report, which you'll find on page 375 tonight. But I won't spend much time discussing it. Everybody should have had an opportunity to digest what is a positive second report from the panel. And the Chief Executive and I attend the meetings of panel and report to the panel where we're asked and quizzed, just in case you wanted to know. We have no influence in drafting the report, as we didn't on the next one, only in terms of how they take from us what we say to them. There are some very experienced local government officers and the LGA's involvement on that panel. And as you'll know, it's a voluntary panel, which we agreed to, recognising where we were. And I think for those that were here earlier, and I don't want to put words in Eleanor's mouth, we're a long way down the path from where we were a year ago, which is great. And again, I'll reiterate what I said earlier. I think there's been a lot of collaborative working in terms of opposition leaders and deputies, particularly through the Financial Sustainability Working Group. But I think in general, there is a great deal of better understanding of the finances and the responsibilities of each of us in this council. So I will move the report as tonight, and I think my probably deputy will be seconding the report tonight. But I'll reserve my right to speak if needs be, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Councillor Steve Allen, will you second the recommendations and either speak now or reserve your right to speak later in the debate?
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to second and reserve my right to speak later in the debate. Thank you.
Okay, may I call up any other speakers on this? Councillor Day, yeah. Councillor Day.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It has been a momentous challenge for us as a smaller party to work through the minute details of the budget, and we as Greens have played a full part in working with the group leader and other opposition group leaders on this task. We are pleased that the Council is now working on medium and long-term issues of service delivery, remodelling and operating models to attain long-term financial sustainability. And our question has always and will always be about how these savings affect local residents and communities. It is noted in the report 4.1.2 on page 377 that the level of inflation has been mitigated largely by the use of additional income arising from the Council's waste disposal arrangements, where additional income generated from higher energy prices has been set aside in a reserve to enable 22-23 cost pressures to be managed and maintained. It states that the panel will take a keen interest in this area. Can I please ask what that interest will look like? Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Fitzgerald?
Well, I would imagine at that point, Mr. Mayor, that Councillor Day would like a response from one of the authors of the report, who is the chair, of course. So, Eleanor, I think it might be you she's asking for a reply from.
Sorry, I couldn't get the microphone to work. Thank you very much. The use of the mitigation of the inflation risk by the use of the additional income from the waste disposal arrangements is a positive, obviously a huge positive for the council, because those inflationary risks are facing all local authorities, and many other local authorities don't have that advantage or that opportunity. The issue that we have is twofold. One, windfall tax arrangements being brought in by the government, that we believe the scale of Peterborough's arrangements avoid that windfall tax, but obviously it remains at risk for the government to be able to increase those windfall tax arrangements if they see fit. But also it's prudent for the panel to make sure that the council are taking into account that the additional income coming in is not guaranteed over the longer term, and that the panel's interest takes the form of the engagement of the panel in the council's work. We ask for information, we provide challenge, the council provides us back with that information, officers seek advice, and I have to say that they very often take that advice. So in much the same way as audit, and the audit committee would be watching with interest how the council is managing its finances, the panel is in a position to be able to take a much keener interest, a much more detailed interest as decisions are taken, rather than looking in retrospect in the way that the audit committee does. I think it's also worth pointing out, as it says in the report, that all of the information that's provided to the panel is provided to FSWG. So it does actually mean that there's real openness and transparency in the things that we're asking about and the things that we're examining, and that in turn the FSWG can both ask about and examine too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Thank you, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor.
Mann.
I've got a question for the chair of the improvement panel, but I'd just like to preface my question by saying that I've been a councillor for just over 25 years, and I've been involved over that period quite a lot in budget making processes. I've seen quite a lot of very heated debate and a lot of confrontation in this council chamber. I've also been part of what was the cross-party budget group, which is now the financial sustainability group, and I think I can honestly say that over the last 12 months, possibly in response to the work of the improvement panel, we have seen a greater amount of cross-party working and a greater degree of consensus. But I don't particularly want to ask a question on the financial aspects. My question is on paragraph 4.32, which is on the electoral arrangements. Round about a fortnight ago, Councillor Sandra Bond and I actually had a group of brownies came into the council chamber. These were children between the age of about 5 and 7, and we actually had them sat in the seats, and they were actually asking lots of questions, and they were really fascinated by the processes that happen here in this council chamber. And I think what happens here, we are in a sense the Parliament of Peterborough. I think it's really important. And so we've actually carried out all of the requests of the panel in respect to looking at whether we should move from having elections annually to having them once every 4 years. We did a public consultation at the October meeting. We had a very good debate in the council chamber. We said we may want to come back and visit it again at some future date, but we reached a conclusion we didn't want to make that change. So I just have to say that I am a bit then rather perturbed that we do get in this report, it says, and I quote from it, the coincidence of no overall control and annual elections by thirds has undermined the commitment to strategic planning in the best interest of the community, etc., and that the panel will keep a close eye on this. So could I ask, could the panel, we've taken all their advice, but could they not also accept that the democratic processes of this council have decided that that is a change that we don't want to take forward?
Through you, Mayor. Firstly, in response to your first point, in terms of the cross-party working that has been seen in FSWG and across a range of other issues in the council over the last year, I would comment that actually stemmed not from the work of the panel, but from the desire of all of the parties that we recognised in our very initial engagement when the panel started, when we interviewed the groups and the group leaders, and that what all of the members of Peterborough City Council wanted to see was better cross-party working, better relationships, and a much greater and better understanding of budgets and budget processes. So it was your desire that was reflected in the work of the FSWG and the work that the panel's been involved in over the course of the last year, and I commend the Council for that. In relation to the electoral arrangements, that specific quote in terms of the undermining commitment actually comes from the governance review that was carried out in 2021 by Andrew Flockhart as part of the arrangements that Peterborough City Council entered into with the government when they were first when they were asking for the capitalisation direction, and that criticism, I think, is the right word in relation to what was happening in the City Council at the time, reflects what was being seen and what was seen by Andrew Flockhart when he conducted that review, and what he saw both in the council chamber and in decisions that were taken, and in part that we saw in the budget decisions in full council last year. And we, of course, as members have heard in the all member briefings on the budget that have been held both today and yesterday, and a third one to be held in January, you're in a much, much better position now. The reason that we believe that it's important to keep it under review is that we genuinely believe that the Council gave absolute proper consideration to the matter. They did what the government asked them to do, and the report says that they did that competently and with integrity. I think we used much more complimentary words when the Chief Executive and I were talking to DLUC about the way that the Council had gone about both that consultation and that decision-making process about all-out elections. What we are seeing in the City Council now in relation to the way that you're working together, in fact you can even see it in the behaviours tonight in relation to questions and answers to members that are demonstrating much better and much more professional and collegiate conversations across members that I have actually seen in very many councils. And I can best you in terms of involvement in budgets. Councillor Sanford, as I started in the government in 1974. So I've seen a lot of very bad behaviour, and I haven't seen any of it in this chamber. The reason that it's important to keep it under consideration is because we have to keep up that collegiate, responsible and professional behaviour constantly, in order not to fall back into a position where being in no overall control does not actually act in the favour of the residents of Peterborough. Thank you.
Does the councillor have a
Yes, I just want to ask a brief supplementary question. I'm really grateful for that reply. It's quite reassuring what you've said. I just wanted to ask you a supplementary question on the point, because we see this assertion put forward that there's a correlation between councils that get into financial difficulties and that councils have elections by thirds. Is there any actual research that proves that there? Because just completely anecdotally, the one council that got into the severest financial difficulties was Northamptonshire, and that was a council that had elections every 4 years.
Through you, Mayor. I am not aware of any specific research that's been done. I think that the councils that have got into trouble for a myriad of reasons. Some financial, some in relation to governance, and some related to completely different issues. I think that what's more important in relation to councils in no overall control is that they lack what you have now put into place and have put into place over the course of the last few months, which is an agreed city strategy. You also have put in place simple things like the budget principles. You're putting in things that are actually giving you all a framework in which to work together to the good of the council, to the good of all of the residents of Peterborough. So therefore, now that you have a city strategy, you'll be able to continue to demonstrate that you can work together, whether you're in no overall control or not. And the electorate will speak in relation to who they want to represent them in each of the annual elections as they come forward, and you'll continue to keep the issue under review as to whether or not it might be better to move to all-out elections, in part for financial reasons, for example, rather than for reasons to do with simple political representation.
Thank you. I have a number of yellow notes here for people to ask questions. I went to Boundary Road Boys School. I didn't go to Harrow, so I don't know all the rules and regulations here. So if I make a slight error in asking people to ask a supplementary, please forgive me. I think I have Shaz Nawaz first to ask a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I have two questions. And the first one, Councillor Sanford has kind of covered, but I'll be keen to hear Eleanor's view. But before I do so, I want to thank Eleanor for being here, and more importantly, for the work that she's done, because we've made some fantastic progress. And under her leadership, all the conversations I've had with her so far, she has great insight, lots of experience, and has been the right person in the right place at the right time. So thank you, Eleanor, for all you've done for us. In terms of all-out elections and short-term thinking, based on obviously your extensive experience of working with local authorities, is it your view, Eleanor, that those councils that have all-out elections generally tend to have more of an eye on longer-term thinking, alongside obviously the cost savings that come with all-out elections?
I think with so many hundreds of different local authorities with so many different types of arrangements, you can find a good example for anything that you want to put, for any argument that you want to put forward. I think what is clear when you have all-out elections is that that administration has a clear 4-year term in order to be able to prove that they can do what they have promised, what they said in their manifesto that they promised to do for the people of any particular area. And if they don't do that, or they fail in that in those 4 years, then they face the electorate in that 4-year, at the end of that 4-year period, and the electorate can decide whether or not they can continue in administration or not. That actually helps, I think, the understanding of the electorate in terms of what they're voting for, the promises that are made to them, and whether those promises are fulfilled.
Second question, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. You have a supplementary?
Second one, yes. Thank you.
No.
So the same part in the report, at 4.3.2, it mentions that the panel would like to see a commitment to proper strategic decision making. So a two-part question, really. First one is, what does that look like from the panel's point of view? And secondly, just to kind of pick on again on your experience and expertise, what do you see, based on everything you know, what do you see as the key strategic challenges that Peterborough faces, and what would you like to see us doing to address those challenges sooner rather than later?
If I take that the two in two parts, in terms of the proper strategic decision making, it actually looks like what you are currently doing. You're working together. You're working through the FSWG. You're looking at bringing forward budget arrangements that members will be able to consider in the light of knowledge and information, shared knowledge and information, when they come to take that decision in February, and that they'll take that decision based on considerations of how that budget has been put forward with collaborative effort, which doesn't mean that everybody will vote for it. It doesn't mean that that people won't abstain or vote against it, but that it does actually mean that proper decision making, proper work and proper effort has gone in to doing that. So if for example, we saw the budget go through on the mayor's casting vote in February of 2023, we would actually think that the progress that had been made during the course of the year was not as deep-seated or as deep-rooted as we thought, as we believe that it is. But it's not to sort of like say there's a 3-line whip on how people vote. It's actually to sort of like say how does that decision go through, and is the council showing much more collaborative effort in taking those decisions. I think in terms of key strategic challenges, the key strategic challenges are set out in your city strategy, because they're saying this is what we need to do, and this is what we want to look like, and this is what we want to achieve over this sort of like foreseeable future. I think I would just sort of like, if I may, I'd change the question to what's the biggest risk. And the biggest risk to the council is the sheer scale of the work that's necessary. It looks like very hard yards over the course of the last year, but this is just the beginning. You need to plan and resource these next stages. And you need to work together the way that you have been doing with both members and officers for the scale of the transformation that needs to take place in your services, and the way that you deliver services and the things that you do. We did say in the report that we recommended that the collaborative way of working of FSWG should continue with respect to the transformation agenda. So either the FSWG continues and keeps an overview of the transformation agenda, or you set up a separate group to do that, because that's where the real challenge lies. You take a decision in relation to the budget and what you're going to do and what you're going to cut, but then you have to implement those savings, and you have to implement the transformation that lies behind them, and that's incredibly difficult. We also point out in the report that there's a balance needed between really strong leadership and direction, which is a top-down approach, and the bottom-up approach of listening to the people who work out there on the front line and really know what makes a difference to the people of Peterborough, and how things could be done differently and better. And that's an enormous challenge, but one that from what I have seen over the course of the last year, and from the work that's been put in by both members and officers, it's not beyond Peterborough City Council to rise to that challenge.
Thank you. We have Councillor Harper, Councillor Hogg, and Councillor Ali. So may I call on Councillor Harper?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I haven't got a question now because it's been taken and answered. So, but I want to speak to the report. So if I could I allow the others to go first who've got the questions, and I'll speak to it at the end, if that's all right.
Councillor Hogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the previous two reports that we've had, there was criticism about our specifically our scrutiny functions, and I see in this report it does talk about the audit committee specifically, which was a particular issue that came out of that, and it says that we're making good progress with regard to the audit committee, and I've seen that firsthand myself. I've placed myself in the room to see how things have improved, and there's definitely more dialogue going on and robust debate at that committee, and it's heartwarming to see. So the question is that, you know, has our scrutiny committees as a whole, you know, do the improvement panel feel that we have turned the corner on all of our scrutiny functions, or is there still work that needs to be done in that area?
Thank you. This is actually a combined report from both the independent chair of the audit committee and the independent panel, because it coincided that it was going to be reported, so it made sense to put it into one report, which is why there's a focus on the audit committee. We do mention in paragraph 4.3.1 that we note that the chairs of all of the overview and scrutiny committees are now held by members of the opposition groups, and we believe that this has increased the formal engagement of opposition members in the scrutiny of the executive's decision making, and we see that as a very positive thing, and we think that alongside the work of the FSWG, that has actually increased the transparency of the work of the council to broadened out across all of the membership. So we do see that as a positive, and we think it's working very well.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Yeah, supplemental on that. Sorry. So one of the issues that we have is that we have a situation where we're under budgetary constraints, and we're trying to make savings where we can. And democratic services is one of those areas that is also looking at their function. And what I'm trying to say here is, should we be looking to maybe even augment democratic services so that we can get the support that is needed for good scrutiny in our committees, or should we be looking to scale back on some of the metrics that are currently we look to for scrutiny, in line with the fact that the purse isn't as fat as it has been, and we need to make savings in all areas. So the question is where do we find that balance? I mean, I can give you for instance, that today we had a briefing note that was due from a meeting in November, the 3rd of November, which was, the response was due on the 17th of November. It was only today that we got a response for that, basically telling us that the response couldn't be given. And so what I'm saying is, should our scrutiny committee be making a fuss over this, or should we be going, okay, so we understand that we're under financial strain, the democratic services, the people that need to come back with this report haven't got the facilities to be able to do so in the time span, and we should be more relaxed about it?
Well, it's a very broad question. And my stock answer would be that your arrangements for your democratic support are a matter for you and for the panel. We would be looking to make sure that your governance was good and strong, including to make sure that it would be adequately resourced. I would make the point, though, very often that reports are late on, or responses are not received in time, that looks as if that democratic services have been responsible, when actually they're not getting the information back from the relevant officers in the other services in order to be able to bring the answers back. In the broadest possible sense, though, your new Director of Law and Governance is in absolute pole position to be able to review what she has just inherited in relation to what works and what doesn't within her structure, and alongside the review of all of your other support services, including, crucially, finance. They're all being examined top to toe as to whether or not they're fit for purpose and whether they're adequately resourced, because the resourcing and planning of the work moving forward is incredibly important. And there's very often, in many positions, as you know, you mentioned it earlier on in your proceedings in terms of economic development, you very often have to invest to save. And that is just as true in services of support as it is in frontline services.
Thank you. May I call upon Councillor Ali to, not Hansa, Councillor Ali to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I've not been a councillor for as long as Councillor Sanford. I've only been in the role for 18 months, and when I became a councillor, we were already in a pretty bad situation financially, and obviously the improvements panel was very much part of our lives as councillors. So it's been an interesting journey for me. But of the three improvement themes, financial sustainability, service review, and governance and culture, my main interest in this report has been financial sustainability. I sit on the FSWG, and I'm also part of audit. So thanks, Councillor Hogg, for saying you visited one of our audit meetings and you found that it was vibrant. Some of us enjoy it. So hopefully we were doing more of what we were supposed to be doing, and hopefully continue to do that. Just speaking on the report, the savings board comes out as something that's been a bit of a success for us. Meeting our budget gap was a big issue, and highlighting all the savings that we did, ranking them in terms of complete, low risk, moderate risk, and high risk was a good achievement. And the fact that there's no high risk savings now for current in year, and we're looking like we are going to have a balanced budget, is definitely a positive, and that comes out in the report. The other thing around, I was pleased to see there was a mention of revenue controls, and revenue controls is essentially saying how well do we spend our money. And one of the big items, one of the big ticket items I think we've highlighted recently, FSWG, is procurements coming in-house. So for the benefit of members, procurement was something that was managed externally, and somebody else was spending close to £200 million of council money. now that's coming in-house, we've got a lot more control over the money that we are spending, and that's going to genuinely give us opportunities to find savings. So future budget gaps should be a thing of the past if we do our job and we do our job well. That specific point actually was highlighted in section 4.4.4 of the report. It actually lists it as a concern, but also an area of opportunity. And I would say, you know, for us members, we should consider it as an area of opportunity and certainly have it in our radars. The only other point I wanted to make was I know there's been a bit of discussion around the electoral reform. There's been a lot of discussion about all-out elections versus thirds. This is a suggestion to save a little bit of money per annum, and it's been suggested by the improvements panel. But if we get our house in order financially, if we're operating at a surplus rather than a deficit year on year, then the improvements panel doesn't necessarily need to come in and tell us how to run our house. So I think it's our responsibility as members. I echo what Councillor Fitzgerald said in terms of the positioning of this report. I think it's fair and I think it's relatively positive. So I'm pleased to see it and I'm pleased to receive it.
Yeah, I'm going to go straight to Councillor Harbour now, if I may.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like I say, the question that particularly I was about the all-out elections, and that's been done now, so I won't go through that again. But I would like to speak to the report, and basically we'd like to express our thanks to the improvement panel, the LGA, our LGA peers, the chief executive, and all the officers, councillors, and committee members, including the volunteer committee members, for their effort and commitment to bring us to the current financial position. The FSWG has been working well together, and we'd like to thank the administration and officers for their open attitude, for sharing information and their determination with us to find solutions. There is more work to be done, but we are confident that this council, by way of cross-party involvement, is on the right path. And so long as this open and respectful attitude continues, we are committed to doing all we can to support it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. May I go over to Councillor Steve Allen to exercise his right to speak as a seconder? Do you wish to exercise your right?
Thank you very much.
Councillor Allen.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to second, and I will say a few words. I'd like to thank Eleanor Kelly for the sterling work leading the improvement panel and their input to dealing with our challenges. I'd also like to echo Councillor Sanford's positive comments earlier, and indeed the comments just now by Councillor Harper. I think there's a real spirit of cooperation across the chamber to achieve resolution to the challenges we face as a council, and I fully support the positive direction of travel which we have in train, and I encourage the chamber to also vote accordingly if we are going to the vote. Achieving financial sustainability is very important, and working together will do that. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor. May I call upon Councillor Fitzgerald? Would you like to sum up?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of detail about electoral arrangements and all sorts of other things, because frankly, this is opinion in this report. It's opinion of the panel. Some of it's based on actual facts and statistics. Some of it is not. It's based on opinion of various members of the panel. But again, I'm going to reiterate what the chair of the panel says. The success that we're enjoying, and I'm pleased to be part of that success as leader, is about the collaborative effort we're all making. And it is noticeable, but look, you know, it's not all roses in the garden. We'll agree and disagree from time to time and cross words, but I hope there are less cross words than there were previously in other administrations. But what I'd like to say to Eleanor is, actually, we don't really want to see that much of her anymore. And she knows this, and they've said so, because we are making such good progress. And members of my own group will recall back in September last year, I said how crucial it was to be working with the opposition. Before we got to the budget or anything else, and my members will tell you that, and I think Councillor Sanford, you will know, because we spoke about it, and others, because we are in a council of no overall control. And we have to work together and we have to get on. As I say, it won't be happy days all the time, but for the most part, I think it is. So the panel may be disappearing sooner rather than later. But there will still be a watchful eye from DLUC. And for those that I hadn't told, even the DLUC local government minister, I hope he's watching tonight, it'd be like our greatest hits compilation, watched our last council meeting about what went on and mentioned it to me personally. So the eyes of government is upon us and we must be seen to be doing the right thing. So no, there is no vote on this. It's just, you know, we are noting it, we are accepting it, unless somebody wants to reject it, fine. But Mr. Mayor, I would just say to you, I'm happy to commend the report to Council tonight and thank everybody again for all their efforts in getting to what is a second positive report, and I'll be looking forward to making it 3 in a row in a few months' time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. You mentioned there isn't a vote, Councillor. You mentioned that there wasn't a vote.
Oh, well, not as far as I'm aware. There is no vote on this item. It's just for noting, because you either accept it or reject it. But take the advice of the legal officer, not me. She's getting paid far more.
Is everybody agreed? So, may I thank you for coming along this evening, Eleanor, and entertaining us. And I hope you have a safe journey back. Yeah, thank you. May we go on to agenda item 9A is in relation to the council's policy around tree management. Councillor Simons, would you therefore like to move the recommendations?
Yes, I'd like to move the recommendations and I reserve my right to speak later. Is that all right? Thank you.
Second the recommendations?
Yeah, I'll second them and reserve my right to speak.
Yeah. Can I call upon any other speakers? Yeah, Councillor Day.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Chair of the Climate Change and Environment Committee, I fully welcome this review of existing tree policy following the high-profile felling of a mature oak tree in Breton. Many residents in the area are still reeling from the loss of this tree. I agree with the summary mentioned in 4.4 of this report that we needed greater transparency of evidence submitted to substantiate claims and that decisions to fell a council TPO tree may have benefited from being referred to the Planning Committee. We support this review of existing policy. Thank you.
To the vote. There's no vote? Agreed. All right. Yeah. Agenda item 9B is in relation to the Helpston Neighbourhood Development Plan. Councillor Suresti, would you like therefore to move the recommendations?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The council is recommended to formally adopt the Helpston Neighbourhood Plan as a part of the Peterborough City Council's statutory development plan. This means that any decisions on planning applications in Helpston must be made in accordance with their neighbourhood plan. The Helpston Neighbourhood Plan has been prepared by Helpston Parish Council with the support of the local community. And in September, local people were invited to vote at a referendum on whether the Helpston Neighbourhood Plan should be used by Peterborough City Council when determining planning applications in Helpston. Almost 95% of voters voted in favour. Prior to the referendum, the neighbourhood plan was subject to an independent examination, and following that examination, the council is satisfied that the neighbourhood plan meets all relevant legal requirements. As the plan meets the legal tests and was supported by the majority of those who voted in the referendum, it must now be formally made by our council. The council must uphold the referendum results, and there is no legal basis to reject it. The neighbourhood plan is a culmination of several years' hard work by the parish council and the local community, who have taken the opportunity to shape their local area through this planning process. Now, I would like to say on behalf of the Peterborough City Council, please let's congratulate the Helpston Parish Council on this important achievement and thank them for their hard work in preparing the plan. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Over, would you care to second?
I think somebody else is going to second it. I wish to speak to it though.
Do we have a seconder then? And then you.
I would be pleased to second it and reserve my right to speak.
Okay, yes.
So long as I'm not treading on anybody's toes. No, okay.
Agreed? Yeah. Okay, you wish to?
I wish to speak before
yeah.
we agreed. I welcome the adoption of this plan, largely put together by the parish council and villagers. All I would do is implore that the council actually take notice and follow it, in particularly with planning. We've had numerous examples over the last 20 years where we've had things like the village design statement where it's been virtually ignored, and we've had planning officers with sparkling eyes coming along saying, I've found somewhere to build another 40 houses, and we don't want them. So I just say thank you for this plan, for accepting this plan, and let's just follow it, please.
Councillor Swersey, you accept that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's really very simple. I would ask the council to adopt the local area energy plan.
Agreed. Yeah. Okay. Yep. 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 Okay.
Oh, sorry. I thought you called me for the next one, Mr. Mayor.
It's agreed. Yes. Okay. Agenda item. Sorry. Yeah. Agenda item 9C is in relation to the local area energy plan. Councillor Swersey, would you therefore like to move the recommendations?
I'll keep it simple, Mr. Mayor. I would urge the council to adopt our local area energy plan, please. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Howard, would you second the recommendation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy to second and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Okay. Can I call upon anybody else who'd like to agree? Where from?
Yeah, me.
Who do I take the advice from? Oh, the deputy mayor. Yeah. Sorry.
I'd just like to make a brief contribution. I absolutely endorse the local area energy plan. It's a tremendous piece of work. It's got a lot. It's a really ambitious plan, and I would certainly urge the council to endorse it. But it does create one small issue, which I think the council does need to address, because in 2019 we actually passed the climate change strategy, which said that we were going to get the council to net zero carbon by 2030, and we were going to get the whole of Peterborough to net zero carbon by 2030. Now, if you read paragraph 4.1 of the report on this item, the consultants working on the local area energy plan have come to, they talk about it in quite a roundabout way, but fundamentally that they've come to the conclusion that it's not feasible to get the whole of Peterborough to net zero carbon by 2030, and they've based their report on achieving it by 2040. So we've just recently passed a corporate strategy that talks about net zero carbon but doesn't have a target date for it. So can I suggest either to the cabinet member or to the climate committee that we really need to address this, because if we are going to have any chance of achieving these really ambitious targets, we need to have clarity on what the targets are.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really pleased to support this local area energy plan. It came through the Climate Change and Environment Committee, and it's worth noting that we are one of the first councils in the UK to put this plan in place, being only pipped to the post by Manchester. So that's an amazing achievement, and I want to thank officers working on it. This local area energy plan provides insight to inform plans to decarbonise Peterborough and help us reach our zero carbon targets. Considering it is looking likely that we will breach the 1.5-degree Paris Agreement targets on global warming following COP27, this plan is extremely timely and we must work to it. We are currently on track for 2 to 3 degrees of warming, which is terrifying. This plan shows that our council is leading the way on decarbonising, and I wish to thank all the officers involved in the creation of this plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Imtiaz Ali, may I call upon you?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor Day. I think it's a very good plan. I think we should be very proud as a council to have adopted this or to be recommended this to members today. I just felt that I needed to speak on this because, again, I share other members' views on the fact that we do have a climate crisis and we need to take any work on climate change incredibly seriously. The net zero target date moving to 2040 is concerning. That's a whole 10 years back from what we planned. That's a massive step back for us. And if we're moving the target so far back, so early in our journey, then what is our target going to look like in 10 years' time? And we're really going to be up against it. One possible omission from the report, which I would have liked to have seen, is the discussion of carbon credits and whether or not we could jump the gun with investing in projects that are going to be net carbon negative so as to monetize that potential future stream of revenue. The other thing I'd say is, did anybody see the number of 8.8 billion investment required in Peterborough? Just to put that into context, that's 100 years worth of capex. We've currently got capex of around 80 million. 8.8 billion is 100 years worth of that. So it's ridiculous how big a number that is, and there's no way we're going to get there unless we have significant support from the stakeholders mentioned in this report. The last thing I'd like to say is we really need to accelerate our work. Let's not stick ourselves to a timetable of hitting certain milestones at certain points in the future, because that will inevitably lead to bottlenecks and potentially push us back from the ambitious targets that we already have. I would say right now we need to be thinking about investing in the skill set we have here in the city. And we've got things like retrofitting houses, and the report mentions that we don't have sufficient people skilled to enable us to do that. This is beginning to sound a little bit like where we got lots of funding to build new houses in Peterborough, but we just didn't have enough builders in the city to build the houses, and we had to return millions and millions of pounds to the combined authority. What are we doing? We don't want to find ourselves in a position where we get funding from the government and we can't spend it because we don't have people who have the required skills. So yeah, appeal to members and officers, let's put the thought in now and let's really prioritise this.
I'm not taking any more questions at the moment. I call upon Councillor Howard, who reserved his right to speak.
No, I'm happy to let it go through to the vote if needed.
Councillor.
I'm happy to see it through.
Suresti, to
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm here. What do you want me to do? Have we agreed it, or would you like me to sum up?
Are we agreed? Are we agreed?
Well, if it's agreed,
Thank-
it's agreed, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We have, we've gone through the agenda 3/4. We've still got a quarter of the agenda to do. So I'm wondering if you would agree to a 15-minute break.
10 minutes, Mr. Mayor.
10 minutes? Okay, 10 minutes. Okay, may we commence? Agenda item 9D is in relation to the council's fees, charges and inflation review. Councillor Coates, I understand you wish to alter this recommendation as set out in the additional information pack. If there is no objections to this alteration, please would you move your altered recommendation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I bring the report where it's recommended that Council adopt the increases in fees and charges that are outlined in the report and in the amended appendix. The report divides up the fees and charges to statutory, where we have no influence, and those that we do have some influence. And there we've generally adopted the inflation rate of 10.1%, which comes from the August Consumer Price Index. All of this has been through the Financial Services Sustainability Working Group and at Cabinet. The only changes come around the area of bereavement services, where there was a further review, where we looked at making some minor wording changes simply to support the customers and the funeral directors who use the service. We had to correct a small number of prices to reflect the intention and the latest supplier costs, and to remove a small number of items which are currently not available to purchase. All of those revisions had no impact on the cash limits for the bereavement service itself. So, Mr. Mayor, I move that the report is adopted as amended, as altered, I beg your pardon. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Sainsbury, would you second the recommendations and either speak now or reserve your right to speak later in the debate?
I second the recommendation and reserve my right to speak.
Yes. Speakers. Yeah. Councillor Ali.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I welcome this revision of the burial and cremation fees for weekends as outlined in Appendix 2. There has been an issue raised by residents, and I particularly want to thank Mark Sandu and his team for meeting a number of residents and we had a very constructive, as a result of that, this review was undertaken and this proposal for reduction for weekends has hopefully been put in the report. So I welcome that. While I'm speaking, if I also can add that there has been some other issues in the Eastfield Cemetery as well with the flooding of the graves. And we are very grateful to Sarfraz Khan. Many of the council remember him. He was the former head of engineering. And he gave us some very useful advice, and which resulted in that issue being resolved. So grateful to Sarfraz Khan and also Mark Sandu and his team for undertaking this review and coming back with these revised fees for weekends as outlined. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, call upon Councillor Hogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, yeah, broadly speaking, I'm very happy with the level of charge increases that have been brought forward here. I do feel, however, something that I have championed quite strongly for almost a year now was the charging of electrical vehicles. Electrical vehicles previously did not have to pay for charging. But I do feel that the rates that have come forward out of that process do seem to be a tad on the high side, and I've had a number of people mention independently that those fees are not in line with those by other providers. So that may be something that we need to tweak later on if the take up of charging plummets. So yes, apart from that, I just wanted to make that point. I have a question on this, but I'll bring it to the decision-making process.
Thank you. Councillor Sandra.
No, Councillor Hoggs already asked the question I was in.
Any further questions? Agreed. Councillor. Agreed? Yeah, no, okay. Agenda item 9E is in relation to the Treasury Management mid-year update. Councillor Imtiaz Ali, would you therefore like to move the recommendation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would. This report is in accordance with SIPFA's recommendation for members to be provided with the Treasury Management Plan, a mid-year review, and also an annual report. This is the mid-year review, which was discussed at the last Audit Committee on the 28th of November, and the annual report is scheduled to go to the Audit Committee in early next year. The report asks members to review the mid-year position and performance against the prudential indicators. Those are mainly the reduction in CapEx, the capital financing requirement, the reduced cost of borrowing as a proportion of net revenue, the reduced debt to capital finance requirement, and also the maturity structure of the existing borrowing. The additional item asked for in this report is for a review and a recommendation of adding additional non-specified investments to the Treasury Management Strategy. These are namely investments in property funds, bond funds, and other pooled funds. The current universe of investments for Treasury Management are money market funds, bank investments, and other local authorities. So I would like to move the report as published in the pack.
Thank you, Councillor. May I call upon Councillor Shaz to second the recommendation?
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor, and reserve my right to speak.
Yeah. Is there any other speakers? Agreed? Agreed, yes. Thank you. Agenda item 10 is in relation to the record of the executive decisions detailed on pages 363 to 369 of your agenda pack. The leader will introduce this item and any questions will be answered by the leader unless he refers them to another member. I would remind councillors that they should ask questions on the decisions in the report. All questions should be relevant to the decisions itself. Should I feel that any preamble is unreasonably long, I will instruct councillors to ask their questions immediately. Can members please note that once I have moved on, the questions will not be accepted from previous pages. Councillor Fitzgerald, would you please introduce the item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to do that for you. I would just quickly preface that. Obviously, any questions that come or arises tonight from these papers, they all have been published or decisions taken, and I'm not aware of any questions prior to tonight, so it would be nice if we could get through this section quickly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I will take each page in turn, and could members please refer to the title or reference number of the decision when asking a question. Page 363, 364, 36. Councillor 364.
Sorry, I'm struggling here a little bit. I seem to have mislaid the particular pages, so I'm not entirely sure which page number it is. But no, as in my question relates to that. My question relates to the fees and charges. So I'm not sure. You'd have to work with me a little bit here. We haven't got there yet. Which page do I need to put my hand up for? Sorry.
So it's not 360.
I'm discombobulated, I think.
Yeah. Okay, I'll carry on if I may.
Okay, thank you. But when we get there, could you please?
365, 366. Yeah.
So my question relates to the fees and charges decision. This was delayed, and we had been promised that the fees and charges would be coming forward in September. They didn't come forward till much later than that. I know, for instance, the fees and charges for electric vehicles was a saving of around £20,000 a month. So that's £40,000 that hasn't been realised because of the delay in coming forward with those fees, the fee changes. So my question is, do we have a figure for the amount of money that has been lost due to the delay of not getting the fees updated because of the delay from September, October? It wasn't until November that the fees came into play.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
I was just discussing who best to answer. As you all know, Councillor Hogg, the subject of fees and charges was discussed quite a lot in the FSWG, and some of the reasons for delay were around deliberations about bins and all sorts of other reasons. And I think I recall the Section 151 officer explaining why there was a delay and that they would be implemented as soon as we can. I suggest your question is best addressed to Cecilia Booth, but by all means go through the lead on finance, Councillor Coles, who no doubt will be able to provide you with an answer. But the delay was explained and why it was, and everybody knows why. If not, something can be circulated in writing, Mr. Mayor.
So just supplemental to that, I just wanted to make sure that we are now back on track, and that the fees and charges, when will they be up for renewal again?
I think you also got the answer to that in the FSWG, that they're annual and they will be updated annually as part of the budget setting process. It's just that this year we weren't in a MTFS, we were in an emergency budget, if you like. There was another term for it, but it was a budget not set in the normal way. A tactical budget, thank you, Councillor Coles. That is why, and charges were implemented as soon as they could possibly be. Just on your other question about the charges, by the way, on why it's so expensive, it was also explained to you in FSWG that the charges per kilowatt were not just based on the electricity, they were based on providing the infrastructure and the installation and the life of it. It wasn't just about the per kilowatt charge. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. May we move on?
Also parking.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, okay, move on. 366, 367, 368, and 369. Shall we move on? Yes, thank you. Agenda item 11, questions on the combined authority decisions made since the last meeting. There have been no decisions received from the combined authority the last meeting. Therefore, we will move on to the next item. Thank you. Agenda item 12, motions on notice. Motions from Councillor Hogg. Councillor Hogg, I understand that you will no longer be moving this item. If so, we will move on to the next motion.
Yeah, I can confirm that.
Motion from Councillor Crammon. Councillor Crammon, would you like to move your motion set out in the agenda back?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd be delighted to move my motion. The park home community of Peterborough nationwide feel that they are an underrepresented sector of society. These residents have worked hard all their lives, paid tax, contributed to society, and do not enjoy the same rights as residents who live in bricks and mortar properties. Often there are complex issues around breach of privacy between site owners and residents, Harassment and intimidation is experienced on a daily basis by park homeowners. Park homeowners have often been quoted at feeling excluded from public consultations around planning applications and the like. They've often felt exasperated at the gaps in some inconsistencies displayed between authorities across the country and site owners, with little in the way of representation for residents. Our officers here in the local authority have displayed some commendable collaborative working to ensure that there are streamlined pathways of communication between park home residents, councillors and site owners. I'd like to thank our officers for their on-hand advice whenever it's needed, often out of hours when problems are faced by residents in park homes. Peterborough City Council's recent updating of licensing legislation for park homes has ensured on paper to a degree that residents will benefit from enforcement of licensing conditions of park homes. But this has come with great challenges, where it has been observed that residents are at the receiving ends of tribunals incurring costs to meet legislation and the need to follow up from concerns raised. It has been after numerous park home reports of similar incidents that the United Peterborough Park Homes and Residents Association of Fengate Mobile Park Home were formed in my ward. Officers have worked to assist in legislating conditions of licence, but due to the many other factors affecting outcomes of legislation, it was necessary to table this motion. As East Ward councillors, I'm pleased to say that Councillor Hemraj, Councillor Allen and myself work very well with each other in this area. And I'm delighted that Councillor Allen will be seconding my motion tonight and has contributed suggestions to ensure it works well for our park home residents. Please consider that park home residents only wish to enjoy a peaceful retired life, safely, free from harassment and intimidation. And I hope that by supporting this motion tonight, we can demonstrate to mobile park home residents that we are on their side. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jackie Allen, will you second the motion and either speak now or reserve your right to speak later in the debate?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to second the motion and I will take the opportunity to speak now, please. Okay. I'd like to thank Councillor Hume for inviting me to second her motion. In true cross-party collaboration, all ward councillors in East have been supporting park home residents and residents groups to bring resolutions to ongoing, mostly long-term regulatory failure. I'm pleased to relay that in this parliamentary term, Conservative MP and Chair of all party group in Westminster, Sir Christopher Chope, has successfully passed his mobile home bill to change RPI to CPI for pitch fees as a fairer and more equitable measure. I know residents across all park homes welcome this change in England, already in place in Wales, and we hope the House of Lords swiftly move to pass this bill. But park home residents continue to face rules that should be further scrutinised and challenged, including site rules, model standards and national legislation. On the 1st of December 2022, a research briefing was published in the House of Commons Library with Sir Christopher Chope MP and Paul Bristow MP supporting improved national legislation, and locally, ward councillors and our regulatory and licensing officers working for improved enforcement and compliance. I am confident that we will not fail our park home residents. On a final note, our regulatory and licensing officers have sometimes difficult jobs to regulate businesses in timeframes that's acceptable to all. They play a pivotal role in alleviating tensions and resolving intentional breaches of licensing terms that affect the amenities and well-being of residents. I'd like to recognise their efforts and thank them. I would also ask members to support Councillor Qayyum's motion. Thank you.
Any other person would like to speak? Agreed? Agreed. Then we'll move to the next item. Motions from Councillor Skipstead. Councillor Skipstead, I understand you wish to alter your motion as set out in the additional information pack. If there is no objections to this alteration, please would you move your altered motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to move the altered motion. This motion, also a cross-party motion, seeks to emphasise the direct link between the climate crisis and the cost of living crisis, and how this disproportionately affects the most poor and vulnerable in the country and in our city here in Peterborough. Many people on the lower incomes, of which there are a high proportion in this city, live in houses with poor insulation, inefficient heating, and the effects of climate change are intensifying the impact of energy prices, increasing pressure on families and businesses. As the cost of living increases and the rise in inflation continues, people and businesses are less able to finance adaptations to improve energy efficiency and to prepare for extreme weather events. This is leading to a worsening of living conditions already under strain. As well as the actions put forward in this motion for this council to adopt and monitor regularly, we also need to continue to put pressure on central government to not just assist in the short term over winter, but to continue to fund support for the hardest hit people and small businesses at a time where ordinary people with jobs can't even afford to put the heating on or have to use a food hub to get enough food. This situation will not heal itself and cannot be managed by short-term help and quick fixes. The current situation cannot be seen as fair or reasonable in the 21st century in an affluent Western society. We also need to ask central government to intensify their support by giving more grants for improvements in the energy efficiency of homes, resulting in energy bill reductions and environmental benefits. I request that insulation schemes and renewable energy generation programmes are funded by fossil fuel profits. This is of vital importance to us now and for future generations. More needs to be done, and it needs doing now. This council can support more dedicated action on these issues. So please would you support my motion tonight? Thank you.
May I call upon Councillor Imtiaz Ali? Will you second the motion and either speak now or reserve your right to speak later in the debate?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do wish to second this motion, and I'd like to speak now. Not directly linked to the motion. Some of these figures will be familiar to you. We're already at 1.25 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, projected to go to 1.5 degrees as a best case scenario. Some projections based on inactivity from local governments and central government and worldwide governments mean we're going to get potentially 2.5 to 3 degrees of temperature increase. That's going to lead to 3 to 4 meters of sea levels rising. That's going to impact not just far-flung places, but also here in the UK. Peterborough is quite low-lying. It's going to impact us. Parts of London are going to be underwater. But more importantly, it's going to be completely unbearable for tens of millions of people around the world. So I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and I had the pleasure of listening to Sir David King, who's a lead professor at Cambridge University. He also spoke at COP27, and he spoke to us just a week after he presented at COP27, and he said, if we don't turn this ship around, we will, by 2040 to 2050, we will have 100 million climate refugees. That is a shocking number. In monsoon season, you have 20% of Vietnam underwater. In 15 years' time, you'll have 70 to 80% of the country underwater. Countries like Bangladesh will be impacted. Countries like Indonesia will be impacted. And clearly, countries like Mauritius will be impacted. The G7 is responsible for 80% of all greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Even if we took 1% of global climate refugees here in the UK, we're talking about 1 million climate refugees. And how that compares to 40,000 that we're currently trying to cater for and having so much pushback politically is going to be absolutely shocking. So we absolutely have to do this. And how are we going to do this? There's a number of ways we can do this. Councillor Skipstead's motion points to retrofitting houses. That's absolutely something that we can do at a ground level, at a local level. And some of that cost is going to have to be borne by householders. Now, with the cost of living crisis, pushing people into poverty, pushing people to food banks, they're absolutely not going to have the resources available. In a previous report, the energy plan, we looked at 12 to 14,000 pounds to retrofit your houses. That's just not going to be money that's available. 80% of households have less than £1,000 of savings. Where are they going to get 14,000 pounds to retrofit their houses? So I implore everybody to support not just this motion, but just reinvigorate yourselves with this fight against climate change and support any motion that looks to improve the world for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. May I call up any other speakers? No. No. Councillor Skipson, would you like to sum up? Or I can't see. Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Skipstead, for bringing such an important subject to discussion. I would like to express my support for the altered motion because it strikes a chord in matters that are incredibly important to so many people across our city at present, including myself: the cost of living crisis and climate change. Last year, I worked very closely with Lord Bird and his parliamentary team in helping redraft the Wellbeing of Future Generations Bill, currently going through Parliament, which seeks to make provisions for public bodies, the private sector, and the civic society as a whole to act in the pursuit of environmental, social, economic, and cultural well-being of our cities and country, bringing future generations at the heart of policy making. I devoted my thesis on the bill by collecting quantitative and qualitative data to understand sustainability efforts made across Peterborough and Northwest Cambridgeshire. And I tested these efforts against the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act 2015, which currently requires public bodies in Wales to consider the long-term impact of decisions made and to work better with residents and communities to address social, economic, and environmental issues. Data revealed that Peterborough City Council and its partners are leading the way in many respects, as well as local businesses and charities are all playing a key role in raising awareness through education about matters such as climate change and providing support throughout the pandemic and now the cost of living crisis. And what is important, finally, about the subject of tonight's discussion, I think it's brought us the importance of an understanding of building back better from the bottom up with a civic united approach and focusing on localisms and communities playing a key role in a green recovery from the pandemic and now the cost of living crisis. And for these reasons, I am in full support of the altered motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Agreed? Yeah. Okay. Motion for Councillor Sanders. Councillor Sanders, I understand you no longer wish to move the motion. If that is so, we'll move on to the next motion.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Okay. Agenda item 13B is in relation to a change to the executive delegations. Councillor Fitzgerald, would you therefore like to move the recommendations?
I hope, Mr. Mayor, that this change in delegation doesn't spark as much interest as it did last time, because it kind of just puts things back on an even keel in terms of the small change that we're requesting or notifying to council today. And it is just for noting again, just as the last one was, but we seemed to vote last time, but I don't think it's a voting thing. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Steve Allen, would you second the recommendations and either speak now or reserve your right to speak later in the debate?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't need to speak at this stage, reserve my right, but I second the leader's proposal.
Can I call upon any of the speakers? Agreed? Okay. That ends the business for this evening. Can I ask, what do you think of the temperature in the room? It's improved. should the council be doing something for the next meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Buy a
I
new
hope
heater.
our officers take note that working conditions are not adequate. And it is our last meeting of the year. May I invite you to the Mayor's Parlour for refreshments? And have a good Christmas and Happy New Year.